their iconography of Krishna and Balram, it was well established. So it was in the society, everyone knew about this. And these coins were in circulation in northwest part, in Gandhar region and beyond, in the Indo-Greek area. So it also shows the spread of the Bhagavad cult. सबको मेरा अभिवादन। ओम गणपतये नमः। आज के इस शुभ अवसर पर इंडोलॉजी फाउंडेशन और उसके मेंबर्स द्वारा आयोजित इस वेबिनार में मैं अपने आप को पाकर बहुत सौभाग्यशाली समझता हूं। डॉक्टर दिलीप महापात्रा, मिस्टर गौतम भट्टाचार्य, प्रोफेसर दीनबंधु पांडे, श्री ललित मिश्रा और अन्य सभी के प्रति मैं अपना आभार व्यक्त करता हूं, जिनके कारण आज मुझे इस विषय पर बोलने का अवसर मिला। मेरा टॉपिक है हिंदू कल्चर बियॉन्ड कश्मीर इन गंधार एंड बैक्टीरिया। आप सब जानते हैं कि बुद्धिज्म, हाउ बुद्धिज्म फ्लरिश्ड in India and then in the time of Mauryan Emperor and then later on in the time of the Kushan king Kanishk and others. It spread beyond the boundaries of India. The present, I am taking the present day boundary, and that is why I am not mentioning about Kashmir, because Kashmir is a part and parcel of India. But in ancient India, many parts of Gandhar were very much there within. And what is going on at present, we are not very sure in the area of Gandhar and Bactria, because we don't get the detailed information from these sites, from many sites, historical sites which are located in this area. So, as I was telling, Buddhism had spread like anything, but very few people know that besides Buddhism, Vaishnavism, Shaivism, Shakt, and other Hindu culture also spread in the area of Gandhar and Bactria. And that is why I have selected this topic for today's presentation. This is a map of India, present day India, and its ancient boundaries and beyond Indus in the region of Gandhar and further beyond towards river Oxus. It was all unified in the time of Kushans. The entire North India as well as present day Pakistan and partly Afghanistan and parts of area around towards south of Oxus. However, the boundaries I'll be telling about the Gandhar and Bactria now. The Pali literature often mentions Gandhar with Kashmir or Kashmir, and among 16 great states, Shodash Mahajanpad, Gandhar is mentioned with Kamboj and Madra. Madra or Madrak, Sindhu, Savir, Mahishat seems to have covered the greater Gandhar region beyond its core area, and they are mentioned in Mahabharata also. Gandharan art tradition, influenced by the Hellenistic style, remained confined to the core area of the region, with more closeness with Udyan or Swat. Impact of Gandhar art on Madhya and Kashmir region has been traced in recent excavations, which I carried out in at a site called Ambara in near Akhnur in Jammu, and also at Kanispur or Kanishpur, which is located near Baramulla in Kashmir. Ancient Gandhar is mentioned in the Rigveda in the context of producing quality wool. It is further mentioned in the Atharvaved Sutra literature and many of the Sanskrit and Pali texts of later times. It was one of the 16 great states, as I mentioned. Uh, it is also mentioned in the Anguttar Nikaya, which is a Pali Buddhist work. Tradition records that the name of Gandhar was derived from the name of Druhyu king Gandhar, the son of Angar. The core area of Gandhar seems to be the region with Lamgan and Jalalabad to the west, the hills of Swat and Buner to the north, and Indus to the east, and the hills of Kalabag to the south. Pushkalavati or present day Charsadda near Peshawar, and Takshashila, which is Taxila, were the capitals of Gandhar in its western and eastern parts, respectively. There are a couple of figures, photographs of the Bhir Mound in Pakistan at Taxila. And as I was mentioning, Taxila was probably the largest city in the Gandhar region, and it had been built at three different sites in Taxila in three different times. The earliest site in Taxila is the Bhir Mound. So on the left side, you can see the picture before the just after excavations by Sir John Marshall, and the present day picture. You can see everything is covered. Whatever the structural remains were found, they are covered with thick vegetation. The second city at Taxila was Sirkap, which was founded during the time of the Indo-Greek and Scythian rulers. So these are a couple of pictures of Sirkap. You can see the extensive ruined structures which were excavated at the time of regular excavations at Taxila, at Sirkap, and the present day Sirkap, which is also a World Heritage Site. So in Pakistan, at certain places, some of the sites have been well kept, like Sirkap is well kept, Jornian is well kept, but some of the sites, as I showed you, the Bhir Mound, that is in ruins and totally covered under thick vegetation. Similar is the case Sirsuk, which is the third site. Now you can see how in north-south orientation and in east-west orientation, in at 90-degree angles,
The
the lanes and by lanes and main street they
the
existed.
slides are not.
Hello? Yes? So this is a slide of Sirkap.
मैं क्लियर नहीं देख रही है सर थोड़ी।
Well, I can see in my camera it is clear, but I don't know. So you have to bear with us. And then in Taxila, we have Sirsuk, about which I just mentioned. It was the third city which was founded by Kanishk himself. The other important site is Jolian in Taxila, where a monastery was constructed during the time of Kanishk himself, as believed by Sir John Marshall. And the terracotta panel, which has now been shifted from the site to the present day archaeological museum in Taxila. I have tried to identify this uh, panel where Lord Buddha is depicted. On the right side of him is the figure of a worshipper who is typical, typically wearing the northerners dress, and I have tried to identify him with Kushan King Kanishk, who was the founder of this monastery at Jolian. Then I would also like to mention that about 4,000 coins, mostly issued by the Kushan rulers, have surfaced recently at People Mandi in Peshawar, which have been published by Osman Bokrachi in the journal The Servants from Paris in its January to June 2008 issue, and a new type of gold coin of Vima cadphises with king in Rath has been found there. It's coin number 9 and 11. Shiva is depicted on reverse of coins, have a clearly new type of Shiva with three heads with legend Basilius Oemo Takto. And Oemo Takto seems to be the Vima, not Vima Catphysis, but Vim Taktu, who was one of the ancestors of Kanishk. So Basilius Oemo Taktu Kushano Shao. So once again, coming to the Kushan coins, let me show you some of the coins where the obverse always has the figure of king, either his bust or in full, or riding on elephant, or in some other way. But on the reverse side of the coins are depicted various deities, and here on the left side, here you can see there are depictions of on the reverse of the first coin there are two figures, and it is written Skando Kumaro. That is Skando Kumaro is one, and Basudev, that is Vasudev. And in the second, there are depiction of three deities, Skando, Kumaro, Basudev, and sometimes Mahaseno. So all these names are of Kartikeya, who was son of Lord Shiva. And on the other coins, you have coins in gold, as well as in the central coin is in copper. So almost every Kushan ruler had Shiva depicted on his coins. Shiva is depicted along with his Nandi, which you can see on these coins. And on the right top two coins or top one coin, you can see Shiva or Oesho is depicted standing alone. In other coins, he is depicted in front of, standing in front of the Nandi. In recent years, due attention seems to have been given by field archaeologists in Gandhar region in Pakistan in revealing more information from archaeological sites such as Charsadda, Taxila, Sheikhan Dheri, Hund, Andan Dheri, Kashmir Smas, Ghor Katri, Manik Rai Dheri, etc. And many archaeological sites have been destroyed by antique hunters through illegal diggings as reflected in articles and research papers. Many of the sites require still better maintenance, as I was mentioning in the case of Bhir Mound and other mounds at Taxila. And recent excavations at Saraikola in Taxila by Abdul Halim and at Charsadda, that is Pushkala, ancient Pushkalavati, which was one of the capitals of Gandhar, the western capital of Gandhar, by excavation by Robin Cunningham, take back the anti. This Robin Cunningham is the present day professor in Durham University. Take back the antiquity of these traditionally known sites to Neolithic phase, that is third millennium BC, and Gandhar grave culture around circa 1300 BC periods, respectively, which is significant in understanding the relation between tradition and archaeology and also establishing how Taxila or Takshashila developed. Now, we know from ancient Sanskrit records that uh, two sons of Bharat were given Pushkal and Taksh. They were given uh, to rule over Gandhar, and Pushkal had his capital at Pushkalavati, that is present day Charsadda near Kabul River, and the other son Taksh had his capital at Takshila. So this is a view of some of the scholars that these two brothers, they were ruling at that part. There is one important script which we find in Gandhar, particularly in Kohistan region, and it is called Kohi Script. A reference to the strange script was first made by M. Sena and Thomas Holditch in 1910. A few long inscriptions have been found in 1999, which are under study by Professor Naseem Khan of Peshawar University, who calls them inscriptions in Kohi script, as most of them are found in Kohistan Swat region. The preliminary results uh, show that the script has affinity with letters of Brahmi, Kharoshthi, and there are a few signs which also tally with the Harappan signs. Now, I would like to tell you one very important aspect on Kashmir's mask. And this has also been studied by the same professor, Professor Naseem Khan of Peshawar University. Discoveries at Kashmir's mast can be considered as landmark in the political, cultural, and religious history of Gandharan archaeology. To me, the word seems to have derived from Kashmir Mutt, which was the earliest known Shaivite monastic establishment in Gandhar. Kashmir's mast, what is called today Kashmir's mast, is a great isolated cave some 1,135 meters above the sea level, located 50 kilometers northeast of Mardan in northwest frontier province of Pakistan. The results of recent investigations have been published by Naseem Khan in Treasures from Kashmir's Mast, which has been published from Peshawar in 2006. Now, this Kashmir's Mast, uh, there is one cave on the hill, and on the foothill below the Great Cave, in the open plain, there is an impressive establishment which is locally called Bakhai. More sites and water reservoirs are also located in the area in the valley. An important fact is that Xuanzang in the 7th century, who was traveling through this region and coming towards the mainland of Bharatvarsh, mentioned the settlement of the area which is represented besides the Great Cave by Safari, Khar Darwaza, Bade Uba, Bakhai, Dulais Mast, Pajja, and Gajdara complex. The establishment continued from 4th, 5th century AD onwards. The Great Cave at Kashmir's Mast is mentioned in a copper plate inscription which was found there during the excavations. It is called, as it is mentioned in the copper plate, the cave is called Sita Mahakandara, where lives goddess Lajja Gauri. And Lajja Gauri goddess is called Bhima, who is also mentioned by Swansang, saw her figure in the mountains northeast of Polusha or Peshawar, which is the area of Kashmir's Mast. Swansang also mentions the temple of Maheshwar or Maheshwar Dev in the area, which can be identified with the house of the Vardhamaneshwar mentioned in the copper plate inscription. Vardhamaneshwar. Now, at least three monasteries or mathas, Shaiv mathas, they existed in the area down the hill, which is called Bakhai settlement, where there are three math or uh, monasteries. First is Kshayani Math. This is mentioned in the copper plate inscription, which was located in the central complex. Then the second one is Ahani Math, which is mentioned in a painted water pot inscription, which was located inside the cave. And the third one is Paramat, mentioned in the copper plate inscription, which was located to the north of Shani Mat. So the third Mat was located to the north of the first Mat. This is information we gather from the copper plate inscription. Now, besides these three monastic establishments, again, I would like to remind you that these are monastic establishments of the Shaivas, and that is why it's called Mat or Smast in the present language, and Mat, which is a common feature of the Shaiv Mathas in different parts, and it is called Kashmir Mat because probably the Kashmir Shaivism had reached in the Gandhar and it was spreading in Gandhar in the post Kushan and Gupta period. So, besides the above three mathas, remains of five Shaiv temples have also been found in the Bakhai settlement. Based on these, I have proposed the original name of Kashmir's mosque to be Kashmir Mutt, as it must have been a center of Kashmir Shaivism in the Gandhar area. Now you can see some of the objects which have been found at the excavations at Bakhai in Kashmir's mosque area. The first two are the images of Vishnu. The third one is the image of Sri Ganesh. Fourth one is a lady figure. The fifth one in the first line may be Buddha or any monk. And in the lower uh, three slides, the first one is a Shivling. The second one is a broken figure of some deity. And the third one is again a Mukhaling. And they belong to, all of them, they belong to the time soon after 3rd, 4th century AD. There are metal plaques and masks which have also been found. You can see the first one depicts Radha and Krishna. The second one depicts a Kinnari. The lower one depicts a Kinnari. And on the right side, the two masks, they depict Lord Shiva, where you can see clearly see the third eye on his forehead. There are ceramics as well as metal utensils which have been found in the excavations, and many of them are connected with the mathas and the monastic establishment as well as with the temple. One important aspect is that the Kashmir's mosque has several bronze seals and ceilings. So you can very well see the figure of Lajja Gauri on the first three figures. In the lower panel, uh, Lajja Gauri as Bhima is mentioned, and she is mentioned as probably it was donated to the goddess Bhima, so it is written Sri Bhimaya. So in all the three, you can see the third one is actually the clear drawing of the second one. And the first one is the seal, the second one is its sealing. So it is written Sri Bhimaya. There are other seals and sealings in bronze. Uh, you have in the first one Sri Bhimaya Guhvasinne. So the Bhima who lives in the cave, Sri Bhimaya Guhvasinne, is the legend on the first seal. You can see the actual seal is at number 1 and number 2 is its mirror image. Similarly, the lower one has Sri Dijarid, but what does it mean? It's not very clear. And on the right side, the single one, you have the human form of Shiva with a Shivling. So it's a ceiling. So all these Shaivite and Vaishnavite elements, they were available there in the Gandhar region, about which uh, only because of the new excavations conducted in the region of Gandhar, these informations have come. I was mentioning about the copper plate. So you can see on the left side, this is the copper plate which mentions about the, the two different mathas, and also about the shrines of Shiva and Bhima Devi. The second one is a Sharda inscription on a schist stone. Similarly, the third one has is again in schist, and it's an inscription which is not very legible, but it is definitely in the Shankh Lipi or conch shell script. Uh, if you just see this seal, you can very well understand the iconography of the well-known uh, Lajjapuri is represented there. The inscription reads Vibhidai, and it's not clear to me, neither to me nor to the excavator, what is the meaning. But in the first one, which is a bronze seal, it is written Sri Bhimaya, which mentions the name of the Lajjagauri, who is depicted as Bhima in the area. There, besides the inscriptions, seals, sealings, and sculptures and other paneled uh, objects, the gold ornaments of very good quality belonging to 5th, 6th century, they have also been found uh, at Kashmir's mosque, which you can see some of the gold ornaments here. But to me, it seems the most important finding of the area. You can see the legend written here from it is the opposite side. So uh, it's the seal, a gold seal. But if you take the impression of it on the right side here, it is clearly written Sri Sitara, and mentioning, and that too in the nail-headed Brahmi script of about 3rd century AD. So Sri Sitaram is a significant thing which we find on the gold seal, and this one is the back side of the seal to hold it for stamping. So this is a very interesting and very significant finding from the area. Now, besides that, around Peshawar Valley, Madan, and Swabi, primitive rock paintings have been noticed in recent times at Natian, Torai Gatai, and Swarai Gatai, etc. Besides Kalatassa, early Buddhist rock paintings have also been discovered at rock shelters of Parlai Dab, Kafir Kot, Marano Tangai, Shamo, and Hinduano Hatai in the Thana Valley. So I'm not going into the details of the Buddhist rock paintings here. And we proceed further. Even the late Buddhist rock paintings are also there, belonging to the 4th, 6th century AD, found at Patwano Gatai and Butkara 1, which have been discovered in recent times. And they are quite, uh, uh, they have quite similarity with the period of Kashmir's past. It's an alarming situation that, in the absence of implementation of strict and stringent rules for preservation of sites and antiquities and also for excavations, a large number of sites, not only in Gandhar, but in the entire country, are being destroyed by antiquity hunters through illegal diggings, and the archaeologists in both government and academic institutions are lamenting over this issue. I would like to give an example. A bunch of Kharoshthi inscribed copper plates from Rani Dab at Orkazai agency in East Peshawar was brought for identification in the University of Peshawar by an antique digger, who immediately took them back and never returned. The 8 leaves of copper plates fused together and bounded by rings were the longest available Kharoshthi inscription in such form issued by one Kshatrap Yudamuni around 1st century BC. So such type of things are lost also. In the Gandhar region, there are a couple of sites which have been excavated, which have given very good results. One is Manik Rai Dheri in Haripur Valley. Department of Archaeology, Pakistan, excavated the site for two seasons till 1999. A cultural sequence of two periods, Scytho-Parthian and Kushan, was found there, and pottery represents the typical ceramic tradition of Gandhar in the early centuries of the Common Era. And there are toiletries depicting various Indo-Greek, Hindu, and Buddhist deities. Peshawar is the ancient Purushpur, which was the main capital of the Kushans. The Balahisar fort, occupied by the army today, has great archaeological potential, but unfortunately it is under the army occupation. It is regretted to mention that the famous excavated site, Shah Ji Ki Dheri, just outside the Ganj gate of Peshawar city, has been today occupied by modern buildings with no remains of Kushan Buddhist settlement. Kanishka's relic casket is in Peshawar Museum, which was found from Shah Ji Ki Dheri. And now, if you go there, you cannot find the spot of the ancient site. Some new initiatives have been taken at a site in Peshawar, the site known as Gor Katri site in center of the fortified city. It has been identified with the site of stupa of Buddha's alms bowl. And scholars such as Abdur Rahman from Pakistan, they connect it with Gorakhnath, an early medieval Siddha saint. And there is a medieval Shiva temple which exists today at the site. Since 1992, the site is continuously under excavation by the Department of Archaeology of Pakistan. The site has yielded a continued cultural sequence from circa 4th, 3rd century BC till present times. Now, after this, let me once again come back to the coins and seal ceilings. The coin, if you see the obverse and reverse of this particular coin of Indo-Greek king Agathocles, it shows on obverse the figure of Balaram. On the reverse, you have the figure of Krishna. The name of the king is also mentioned with his title Basileus Agathocles on the obverse, and it is written in Greek characters. And on the reverse side, it is written in the typical second century BC characters of Brahmi, Agathu Klesh. So, probably in the entire Indian context, a depiction of Krishna and Balram in the second century BC, we owe this to the Indo Greek kings. And their iconography of Krishna and Balram, it was well established. So it was in the society, everyone knew about this. And these coins were in circulation in northwest part, in Gandhar region and beyond, in the Indo-Greek area. So it also shows the spread of the Bhagavad cult. Vishnu from Gandhar, 4th, 6th century AD, a sardonyx seal representing Vishnu with a worshipper is shown on the right side. And there is a cursive Bactrian legend there which mentions Mihir, Vishnu, and Shiva on it. There are a number of Shiva figures which have been found from ancient sites in Gandhar, mostly belonging to the time of the 4th, 5th century AD. Probably that was the time when the Gupta rulers had their sway over that region, and it was a very mixed culture which was developing in Gandhar. The Buddhist, the Brahmanical Hindu, uh, mixed with the Indo-Greek and Indo-Persian, Persian, Chinese, all mixed together. So you can see the Shiva sculptures in Gandhar region, and uh, we have also figures. These are some representative figures which I am showing you. The first one, Kartikeya, the second one, Vishnu, the third one, Surya. And most probably there is a influence on these figures. They belong to about 6th, 7th century AD. And there seems to be a direct impact or influence of the Kashmir art on them. Uh, Without mentioning about this particular inscription, we may not be doing justice to the lecture. Rabatak inscription, which was found in 91-92 in the Baghlan province of Afghanistan. It's a record which gives details of the Kushan dynasty and the happening in the year 1 of Kanishk. Also, it gives the genealogical list of the Kushans from Kujula Catphysis to Kanishk, in whose reign this inscription, this 23-line inscription on a stone slab was written in the Tokharian language or Bactrian language, but in Greek characters. It clearly indicates that the new language was adopted for official purpose, which is called Arya Bhasha, Aryo Basu. Though Greek script was initially used as it was common amongst the subjects. Kanishk is credited to have introduced an era in his year 1, and he already had sway over the northern India. Various cities of the Kshatriyas are mentioned under control of Kanishk, including Saket, Kaushambi, and Patliputra. The names of Ujjaini and Kaundinyapur and Sri Champa have also been deciphered in the inscription as under Kushan rule. The discovery of Rabatak inscription has provided insight to understand evidence from previously discovered inscriptions for new interpretations. The second known Kushan king, Vima Taktu, seems to have been mentioned in the Dasht-i-Nawur inscription in Afghanistan and in the Mat inscription at Mathura. The earlier written in Tokri language and Greek script, and the latter in hybrid Sanskrit and Brahmi characters. The Shtavur inscription mentions Istorgo Oemo Takto, and Mat inscription records Maharajo Rajatirajo Devputro Kushan Putro Shahi Vem, and then there are letters which are quite damaged, but Ta is very clear. Probably it is Takshumasse. Both seems to mention Vima Taktu and not the third ruler Vima Cadphises. And we know from the genealogical list of the Rabatak inscription that Vima Cadphises was father of Kanishk and Vima Taktu was grandfather of Kanishk. In recent studies, Humbach, Fussman, Sims Williams, Joe Cribb, B.N. Mukherjee, and others have made significant contributions on it. Kushan Devkul, which is known as Bagolago, have been traced at Dastinavur, Surkotal, Rabatak in Afghanistan, and at Mat in India. And we know about the Devkulas from poet Bhas, who has written Pratima Natkam, where the Devkul is also mentioned. The area of Mat near Mathura is known as Tokri Tila, which seems to refer to the mound of the Tokharians. Now, from Gandhar, we come to Bactria or Bahlik. Uh, Antiquity of the Indo-Bactrian relationship starts in the prehistoric times with the evidence of rock art, but can very well be understood with the growth of 16 great states of northern South Asia, or in other words, the ancient India. Traditionally, Madhya Gandhar and Kamboj were considered parts of Jambudweep or ancient Indian region, but towards north of it was Bahlik, which is none other than Balkh or Bactria, but not confined to northern Afghanistan and extended in the region of the Oxus-Jaxartes divide and traditionally called in India in the medieval times as Balkh Bukhara. It covers the area of present-day Uzbekistan and partly Tajikistan, with its neighbors Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan. So there are certain comparisons of the rock art which we find in Fargana in comparison to what we find in India in Ladakh. There are the ibex figures which are very common in both, and ibex figures are in Baltistan region. It had been there had been uh, a ritual in which the thanksgiving after childbirth was given at certain places, and ibexes were worshipped. So ibex figures were carved on the rocks, and this process was called in the Balti language as Thuma Saling. The Bactrian region and the areas of Sok Tukharism was occupied first by the Tokharians with their center of activity around the city of Termez near Samarkand in Uzbekistan. The core area was Balkh, Kabul, and the region on both the sides of River Oxus. Archaeological excavations have brought to light large sites at ancient Termez, Karatepe, Zartepe, Chengiz Tepe, Kampir Tepe, Khalchian, Dalvarjin Tepe, Afrasiab in Uzbekistan, and Ajina Tepe, Kenjikan, and others in Tajikistan. Buddhism flourished in this region from Kushan period onwards for several centuries with direct contact with Indian mainland and with the sites of Chinese Turkestan in Tarim Basin. Now let me tell something about the Rishik Tushar. The Indian Puranic tradition, Matsya, Vayu and Brahmand Puran, they assign 105 or 107 years of rule of 14 Rishik Tushar kings who succeeded the Yavanas. Mahabharata also mentions them. Indian literature always refer Kushans as either uh, Tusharas or Turishkas, as in the Rajtarangini of Kalhan, where three names of kings Hushk, Jushk, and Kanishk are mentioned. The Tokharian, that is Kushan titles of kings such as Bado Shao or Shao Nano Shao continued among the Turks and Mughals in the medieval times as Badshah or Shahanshah. Bado Shao, Badshah, and Shao Nano Shao as Shahanshah. After the downfall of the imperial Kushans, their successors in different parts of Kushan Shahar, uh, Tigin or Napki Malik, around 5th, 6th century, continued to use the title of the Kushans, and the latter on his coins called himself to be the king of Tokharians and Persians, Tarkhan, Khorasan, Malka. Indian scripts, Brahmi and Kharoshthi, became popular in this extended region of Bahlik, and when the Kushan Empire was founded, all of these areas were politically and culturally united. This was the time when Indian monks and traders settled in the region beyond Oxus and Jaxartes, and the evidence from Termez, Karatepe, Dalverjin Tepe, and many more archaeological sites in Uzbekistan attest to this. A place in Uzbekistan called Kankini can be identified with Kank, who is mentioned in the Charak Samhita of Maharshi Charak, which is a book on medicine. It is the place from where came the Bahlik physician, Kankayan Bahlik Bhishaj. So there was a continuous interaction between different religious groups, different scholars, different traders with bacteria or Bahlik. This is a picture of Afrasiab, which is a very great site near Samarkand, excavated by the formerly Soviet Union. The area of Termes, where there are so many sites, city sites, as well as monastic establishments, which I just mentioned. About language, I must tell that the language used by the Kushans was Bactriano-Pali or corrupt Sanskrit, which was derived from Tokharian and Sanskrit and had become lingua franca of the entire Kushan Empire from Oxus to Ganga, and the Rabatak inscription also mentions that in the first year itself of his reign, Kanishk had discontinued the use of Greek language and adopted Aryo-Bhasu, or the Tokharian mixed with Bactriano-Pali, as the state language, which had brought the people of Uzbekistan and India nearer to each other about 2000 years ago. Sanskrit literature, particularly the Puranas and Mahabharata, mention the Yuchis as Rishik, and the joint word Rishik Tushar, repeatedly mentioned, suggests Yuchi Kushans or the Turks belonging to Rishik family. Even in the 12th century AD, the Sanskrit poet Kalhan in his Rajtarangini calls three Kushan rulers, Hushk, Jushk, and Kanishk, as Turushk, which was the general name given to the Turks. The term Turushk in Sanskrit is nearer to Tokhar, by which name the Kushans were known, and the area of their original settlement was called Tokharistan, and the language they used was called Tokharian. These people from Uzbekistan had their sway in Gandhar and in North India somewhere in the first century BCE, when Kuzula, who had relationship with Parthian Gondophares of Taxila and Indo-Greek ruler Hermias of Bactria, and who is referred to as prince in his early life, became sovereign ruler by ending the rules of Parthians and Indo-Greeks and established his rule over Gandhar and also probably North India, where his successors, including the two Vimas, Kanishk, Huishk, and Vasudev, ruled till the 3rd century AD. I'm not going into details of the Tokhars now, but one aspect I would just like to mention that inscriptions from Sarnath, Zeda, Mathura, Manikyala, they mention Mahakshatrap, and the names are also given. Similarly, Mahadandanayak and Dandanayak names are also given. And they all are the Tokharian feudal names who were given these titles. But the Indian population who was working in the administration was either Gramik or Padrapal, which we find mentioned in the inscriptions. View of Kampir Tepe, which is an extensive city site in Termez area on the bank of river Oxus. And then there are certain comparisons of objects found from Fayaz Tepe in Uzbekistan with the objects which we find from the Baroque Gandhar sculpture objects from Indian context in Ambaran in Aknur region. There are inscribed potsherds which we find from various sites in Termez region. Bactrian terracotta head of a rishi and the Kushan princes. First one is from Old Termez, the second one is from Mathura. And now I come to the concluding part. The chronologically, there are 3 phases of Kushan settlements. First, in the region of Tokharistan, that is north of Bactria and Uzbekistan. Second, in Gandhar, south of Bactria, and from Kabul to Taxila. And the third, in North India, they had their 3 capitals in these 3 spheres or regions. First, in the Surkhandaria region near Termez. Second, in Purushpur or Peshawar. And the third at Mathura. Once the Kushans occupied India, the cultural impact started in opposite direction. Extension of Indian culture is first visible in Gandhar and then in Bactria. Due to Kushan interactions and carrying forward the Indian culture in the Tarim Basin and around the Gobi Desert, Indian culture, mainly Buddhist, was adopted in the present Xinjiang area of China, but you can find even in Dunhuang case and also the figures of Hindu depicted in Dunhuang, Ganesh, Shiva, and other Hindu deities are depicted there in Dunhuang. Similarly, Shiva is depicted in Kwanzao on stone, and Narsimha is also depicted over there. Thank you very much.